Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I am Dee Dee Calusi, the Associate Director of Financial Aid Advising at the Anschutz Medical Campus. We have Nancy and Jason from Canvas Credit Union here to present the psychology of money and just taking control of their spending. We hope you find this valuable, and you'll have copies of the slide deck along with this recording on our YouTube page, which will be sent out shortly after our session is complete. And I'll transfer it over to Nancy now.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for the partnership we have to help with understanding finances because it changes every day. There's always new stuff, and we are all learning and growing on all aspects of finances. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it's not about spreadsheets and percentages. It's about our emotions and the little mental games we play and the tricks that marketers do to us. So, we're going to look at the not rational, logical, spreadsheet, percentage kind of conversation. We're going to have some fun with what our crazy emotions and attitudes and opinions do to us about money. So chat is open and y'all are welcome to chat in any questions or comments. And otherwise, let's take a look at how this class came to be. Most of the conversation today is really based on this book, Dollars and Cents. And the fun thing about this particular book is that it's written by a behavioral economist and a comedian. And so it means that we look at our emotional approach to money, we look at the financial side, but we also get the comedian's perspective. So it's a ton of fun to read. If you're a reader and you find this topic interesting, I really suggest you take a look at Dollars and Cents. The book starts by asking this question: what is money? So if you're able to chat in an answer, I'd love to know what you think money is. And then if you're watching the video, just take a second and think about what is money? And so I will see if anybody has an opinion to share, and then I'll share what the book talks about regarding that question. And I do, Jason, do you want to help with the chat?
Sure thing. I'm monitoring it.
Okay. So it looks like we had freedom and stress. So interesting observations. We have both sides of it. It is powerful, freeing ability, that kind of thing, and it's like stressful and frustrating. And that's exactly right. Some of the conversation that the book has about money is it's a tool. Okay. And there are a lot of reasons why the money we use right now takes its current form. But there are some general words that describe what money is. And let's use those descriptions of being versatile, general, divisible, storable. So if you think about money that we use today, it fits that description. But sort of to compare our current form of money with something that's kind of silly. Let's talk about what if we use cows for money? It's tricky to find equal cows. So they're not versatile and they're not general. They're not easily divisible. We don't take 27/100ths of a cow. And storage is an issue. So you can see from that silly example, some of the reasons we've come up with the current systems of money are because it's useful and helpful and easy when we have money that's versatile, general, divisible, and storable. Some of the other definitions are about it's a common good. It can be used by anyone for almost anything. And ultimately, it really represents value. For some reason, we agree that this thing has value. Something I want you to be thinking about in a minute here is, where did you learn about money? So again, if anybody wants to put it in chat where you learned about money, let's look at some of the common places that people learn about finances, money, best practices. Sometimes it's from our families. We have childhood lessons, whether that's from our parents or because we took some class at school and we learned about things that way. Society shapes us in the fact that, something like in America, it's a common perception that everybody's in debt. Everybody takes out loans. In other parts of the world, that's not true. But another aspect of that social cultural thing is just, what we think is normal, what are normal incomes, what is it normal to spend money on? Should we be savers? Some cultures have a very different approach to that. And then we learn about things through influence. These days, TikTok tells us about money. And another way to think about that influence could be even marketing manipulations. If you have kids, then we know how social media, what do they see on YouTube that influences what's on their birthday gift list. So we have these influences coming at us. And I mentioned that we're going to talk about emotions. Have you ever made a money decision when you were angry or sad or lonely? Maybe it was that you did some online shopping after you had a fight with your teenager. But financial decisions often really are not rational, but are influenced by what we have going on emotionally in our life. And then there is just this personality thing. So even people who grew up in the same culture, grew up in the same family, went to the same school, theoretically, they should have had the same influences on them, but they approach money very differently. I often ask in a class, do you have a sibling who views money differently, handles money differently than you do? And almost always the answer is yes. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know where they got these ideas. They're insane to be approaching money this way. And yet you all grew up in the same household. So some of it is simply our personalities. I'm going to take a look. Jason, what did people answer in chat that we have where they learned about money?
We've got parents. So I would say, for me as well, I remember growing up, just kind of seeing my dad, my parents doing the bills
Yep.
at the kitchen table, all by hand for computers.
Yes.
And then obviously a little bit with school, but not as much as I think nowadays where it's more important now.
And it's interesting with family. Sometimes the experience that you witnessed, it says, I do not want to do this. I see my parents struggling or failing or being frustrated, and I'm going to take a different approach. And sometimes it's really wise behavior. I saw them always paying the bills. I saw them doing this. And it's one of the challenges we have with the transition to a lot of electronic payments. Nobody sees people making payments. It's been set up automatically and the money just disappears. And there's a challenge for young people to realize that this stuff is even happening. Mom and dad are actually paying the electric bill and maybe I should turn the lights off. So yes, just changes in how this stuff is all coming together. I just want to wrap up this slide by saying that as human beings, we handle money in a way that feels good, but doesn't necessarily make sense. So I'm going to say that one more time. We, as human beings, we handle money in a way that feels good and not always in a way that makes sense. And the book talks a lot about this, so we're gonna dive into this concept of opportunity cost. For anybody who's had an economics class, I imagine you've learned about opportunity cost. The idea is we can only spend money once. And so what's the best use of what I have? So just think for a minute, how could I spend $5? Could get a coffee. I could buy a used book. Do they still sell $1 lottery tickets? If so, I could get 5 of those. Okay. I could give it to the guy in the corner with a cardboard sign. So there's multiple ways something as simple as $5 could be spent. And our job is to evaluate what's the best use of my $5. Well, when it's a $5 spending, is sort of easy to grasp. But what if it's $1,000? What are the options on how many different ways we could spend $1,000? So although our spending should be based on opportunity cost in terms of getting the best thing, the wisest use of what we would spend compared to other ways we would spend, this is so complicated that our brains come up with shortcuts. And those shortcuts often have us valuing things incorrectly. And this is where the book really takes off on helping us understand that maybe we've been misguided in how we're setting the value of something. So we're going to go through some examples and focus on a couple of key thoughts here. We're going to talk about relativity, anchoring, avoiding pain, and expectations. And those are all different ways that our brains are taking shortcuts because the concept of figuring out the best use of our money is just too overwhelming. So let's start with this first one, which is the theory of relativity. And relativity is going to lead us astray related to values because we compare the wrong thing. So of course it's smart to compare things to establish value. The problem is sometimes we don't do it in a very good way. So let's think about a typical Saturday. We're going to go shopping and let's see what happens with relativity. You're at the shoe store. You decide, need a new pair of shoes. I really like these. They're $75. You go to pay at checkout, and the nice sales clerk says, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but if you just drive for 5 minutes to this other store, you could get these same shoes for $50 instead of $75. And so you think, well, I could save $25 just by driving for 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Gee, I hope you don't get paid on commissions because I'm absolutely going to go do that. So after you found your deal on your shoes, the next place you stop is that furniture superstore, and the patio set that you've had your eye on is there. It's available. It costs $1,075. And again, you're ready to pay for your new furniture set, and the sales clerk says, I shouldn't tell you this, but this same patio set is on sale for $25 less at a store that's only a 5-minute drive away. Would you do it? So this time, most people say, no, I'll just make the purchase here. Why? Because somehow $25 off of $75 feels better than $25 off of $1,075. But you're saving the same amount of money for the same effort. In both cases, you'd drive for 5 minutes. In both cases, you would save $25, but it doesn't feel the same. It's the same reward for the same effort, but it just doesn't feel the same. Relativity fooled us because we made a comparison of percent off. 25 off of 75 is like 33% off. 25 off of 1,075 is 2% off. And so we've made a comparison, but it isn't necessarily the best comparison. Relativity fooled us there. Another example of relativity is bundling. So I don't know if any of you have fallen for this, but you drive through the fast food drive-up and you've got a bottle of water with you and you're not all that hungry. So should be able to just grab a burger and be fine. But wait, if you just spend a little more, you can get fries and a drink. So even though I don't need the drink and I don't need the fries, somehow it seems smarter to spend more money. The bundling has confused our comparison skills. And then there's one more relativity trick that I want to share with you, and this is a small addition to a big number. So let's say you're at the grocery store and you've got a cart full of groceries. And what do they have at checkout? All those little things, all those little cute things that only cost a couple bucks. And you're like, yeah, throw in some gum. Maybe a flashlight. What all, car air freshener? What all do they have at that little, as you're checking out? But everything costs a couple bucks and you're already spending $200. So what's the harm? Or if you think about a big purchase like an automobile, $35,000 worth of car, and what's $300 for floor mats? You're already spending $35,000. So you see, the relativity of a small addition to a big purchase fools us into maybe making a choice that isn't the best use of our money. So if there's any questions or comments, feel free to throw them into chat about that concept, but that's relativity. And we'll move on to another way we can get fooled about money. Anchoring is when we make a financial decision based on an irrelevant starting point. So it's a price point that gives you an idea of how much something should cost, but often that anchor that's being given is completely irrelevant. So I don't know if anybody shops at TJ Maxx or Ross, one of those kinds of places. But you'll notice they have multiple price tags on the clothes. And so I bought a pair of pants. It had an MSRP of $68. But the price I'm going to pay that day is $20. So I feel great. I'm getting a $68 pair of pants for $20, but where did 68 come from? Who says the pants are worth $68? Maybe the true value of those pants is only $21 and I'm saving $1. To me, the pants were worth $20, but was it partly in my head because I'm comparing it to what I've been told the pants are worth at 68? One of the most fascinating examples in the book for me was related to a test they did at MIT. So they did this experiment where they brought in students and they had the students. And so think of this yourself as we're sitting here. Think of the last two numbers of your social security number. And if you're like me, you have to say all 9, 10 digits, whatever, before you can get to what the last two are. But what are the last two numbers of your social security number? And then the next step of the experiment was to bring out a box of fine chocolates and say, would you pay that, whatever your last two numbers of your social security, would you pay that for this box of chocolates? And then they brought out a bottle of wine and said, would you pay that amount of money for this bottle of wine? Okay, and then the final step in the experiment was, well, how much would you pay? And here's the really weird part. The higher their social security number, the more they were willing to pay for the item. That makes zero sense. A totally random number. And all it did was in their head anchor somehow that the value of these items was higher or lower because their social security number was higher or lower. Okay, so if you have questions about that one, let me know. But I thought that was, talk about a random number. And it totally influenced their thinking. So about the value of these items. All right, and the final example related to anchoring is about how we want bargains. We want to feel special. We're beating the system. We're getting a good deal. Many years ago, JCPenney offered a program called Fair and Square. And what they did was set the price of all the items. So if you wanted to buy a shirt, it never went on sale. This shirt was always $25. If you wanted to buy a pair of shoes, they never went on sale. These shoes were always $75. If you wanted to buy some makeup, it never went on sale. It was always $22 for the lip stain. Okay, so it was called Fair and Square. And the consumers absolutely hated it. The company virtually went bankrupt. The CEO lost his job. And of course, the program doesn't exist anymore. Because as consumers, we want to feel like we're getting a deal. We don't want a fair and square price. We want to feel like we're beating the system. And so shoppers would go in and it was never on sale. There was never buy one, get one. There was never 50% off. It just was the price all the time. And we don't like that. So those are some examples of ways that our brain gets fooled with this concept of anchoring, and it establishes value, but it doesn't establish value in a really smart way. Before we move on, I would love to have you think about this or put it into chat. Do you have a brand that you insist on? So it could be the brand of a car, a brand of clothing, a brand of food. Is there a brand that you are extremely loyal to and you will not substitute that brand with a different one? So if you have one to put in chat, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, just be thinking about that. And we will get to that one in a minute. Here's our third concept of how we get fooled when we're spending money. We sometimes joke about money, being painful. It's painful to pay for things, whatever. Well, it turns out it actually is. When we pay for something, it stimulates the same brain regions that process physical pain. So there's a formula for the pain of paying, and the pain of paying equals time plus attention. So the way our brains get tricked with this is if we increase the time between consumption and payment, then it doesn't hurt so much. Or if we decrease how much effort, how much attention it takes, then it's less painful. So some examples that we're going to give, these are either going to increase the time between consumption and payment, or they're going to decrease how much attention it takes. Think about using a gift card. Hardly any pain. It's like free money. Okay? Think about a prepaid vacation. You already paid for it. Now you can enjoy it fully without stressing. This free shipping concept, if you belong to something like Amazon Prime, where you've paid a chunk of money and now you don't even think about it, you've already paid for it. And so those are separating how much pain is involved in paying for something, because we separated the time from the use. Credit cards are another one where you enjoy dinner, a night out, but you're not paying for it until much later. And so you enjoy it more. So some of these things are not necessarily good or bad, but it is a little trick that our minds are playing on us. So It's going back to that gift card thing. I don't know if you guys spend more when you have a gift card. I know sometimes if I have a Starbucks card that was given to me, I might get a bigger coffee, might get a pastry, might spend more than I normally would if it was my money, but it was a gift. So it doesn't feel the same. Anytime we get money from an inheritance or a win or a gift, we treat that money differently than we do money we had to work for. Okay. So besides the credit card being avoiding pain by paying later, let's talk for a minute about the attention it takes. When you have everything preloaded into your online account and all you have to do to buy is go click, it's got your shipping address, it's got your credit card number, everything's all set, click. That doesn't feel very painful because it was so easy. So here's kind of the opposite of that is a way, instead of it maybe fooling you, and you can take advantage of it, is if it's a savings account that's automatically being funded and you don't have to think about it, boom, automatic. A great result with one of these mental tricks that's going on. And finally, people who pay cash, this is a very real experience. I mean, it's proven that when you're spending with a credit card, you're going to tip more, you're probably going to buy more. Most people approach paying with plastic, it ends up costing more for them. Most people. Okay, and cash is very real. So if people have been struggling for some reason to get a grasp on what they're spending or struggling with understanding where their money's going, using cash can be really valuable, because if you think about it, if I'm going to pay cash for something, I have to find the money, open up my wallet, I have to see it and touch it, count it out, find the right amount, hand it over, and then probably I get some change, which I have to put back and see it. So it is very real, very in the moment, and can make you very conscious of what is being spent. So again, this particular thing isn't necessarily good or bad. We can turn it to our advantage. It's just a trick that spending can be painful. And so we've come up with ways to make it be less painful. Jason, anything we need to touch on?
No, just a couple brands. Dee Dee had said Apple Technology for a brand that
Okay.
she's loyal to. For me, I just went simple, like with snowboarding clothes, 686. It's just a brand I like. I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. It works. So yeah.
Yeah. So I love your brand examples, and that's what's coming up next. The last time I taught this class, it was a bunch of recreation kind of people, and Lululemon. I mean, oh my gosh, they are not going anywhere else. Okay. I taught the class once and it was Oreo cookies. No store brand sandwich cookies, must be Oreos. And then sometimes it's a car brand, but this is another classic example of maybe money value mistakes because we're expecting something. We have this expectation that this brand is going to be better, or we have an expectation that we're willing to spend more because of the setting we're in. So I don't know if anybody's bought a beer at a sporting event, but it's a whole lot more expensive than buying a 6-pack of beers and taking it home. Okay. And if you've ever popped for the burger lunch on the ski slope, it's outrageous. Yes. And Jason's going, I take my kids. You should talk about outrageous. But the problem is that, the alternative is schlepping everybody down to the base, hiking to the car in those awful boots, getting the cooler out, finding a picnic table, feeding everybody, getting it back to the car, and then getting back up on the mountain. So what you would never spend when you were in town, you're willing to spend on the ski slope for lunch because of the setting. And again, this isn't bad. We just have to go into it knowing, yeah, this in thinking about the best use of my money, I'm managing this because of the setting. I'm dealing with this. I'm doing things that I maybe normally wouldn't do or that I might have to plan for to be able to afford it. So, and I think we've all been caught by the water bottle at the airport because, you know, yeah, you got to get through security and forgot to bring the empty one. And okay, so um, again, all these things feed into I'm actually spending more, and um, I'm okay with that because of what's happening. I've thought about it, I planned for it, and then that brand expectation of does Tylenol really work better than generic? You know, I don't know, but what are we willing to experiment with that's not a brand name, and what have we decided are going to be the brand names we pay for? That's just part of our financial journey, figuring out how we feel about these things. Another thing that throws us off with this category is the free extra with a purchase. I don't know what it is about those little tiny bottles or containers or something attached to a big bottle. And suddenly it's like, oh, that's cute. I'm going to get that big bottle because it comes with a free little bottle. And I mean, okay, free addles our brains. Let's just go there. So those are, again, some expectations, some situations where we might do things that maybe we're establishing value in not the best way. Okay, so we talked about all these tricks that get played on us. Now, what are we going to do about it? And so let's talk, we're going to talk about both the saving and the spending side of things and give you some tips on how you can beat these tricks that our minds play. So when we talk about saving money, I mentioned this, you know, we can use that pain of paying concept to our advantage by setting up automatic transfers to savings. It doesn't take any effort. It just happens automatically. You're rewarded. So that's called pay yourself first. And we strongly recommend that in every way. And whenever you're working a job that comes with the opportunity to have retirement money automatically contributed, you know, again, that's you're paying yourself first. It's painless. You've made it easy. Any kind of automated transfer into a savings account is going to be helpful. Here's another odd trick. It turns out that if we name our accounts, we're less likely to spend it on something else. So if your goal is vacation or a Tesla or a down payment on a house, I don't know, vacation, whatever your goal is, if you actually name a savings account with that, we tend not to dip into it for other uses. Mental games. And then there's the rounding up concept. If you're a cash spender, then, you know, at the end of the day, you empty out your pockets and put it in a coin jar. That's certainly not very common anymore, but they've come up with virtual options, ways to do a roundup at the end of the day. And when you're using your debit card, a little bit of extra money goes to your savings account. Automatic. No thought required, not painful at all, just a small amount of money. So another way to take advantage of this, you know, no effort is to be in a high yield account. There are a lot of great accounts out there that are paying good interest rates. And if you've just automatically stayed with some account that's not paying anything, get it moved over to somewhere that's paying good interest on your savings. They certainly exist. And then for no effort, you just let the money sit there, you gain savings. And obviously anything to do with employer benefits as you are plugging into the workforce and finding out what the employer can offer. These are free opportunities to enhance your financial life. All right, those were our savings comments.
You know what, Nancy, real quick, Dee Dee put a couple comments as well. So back to the free stuff. So free shipping when you spend X amount of money, and you think we've all been there. $5 away from free shipping, and then you buy something for $15
That's like
and now you've
socks. That's my
overpaid. So
socks are my go-to.
yeah. So, and then she had a really good comment for the students there on campus about sending their student aid refund to their high yield savings accounts and scheduling an automatic transfer for living expenses and help students not run out of aid before their next disbursement. So,
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so much of this stuff, it applies, if you're in the workforce, it applies if you're a student. Some of those savings things as students, you have discounts that are available to you that other people don't have. Are you aware of those? Are you following those? Have you talked to your friends? Where do they get their coffee? Where do they get their ski equipment? What are the discounts available to you? So, um, and then this, let's move into the spending thing about some ways to take advantage of these mind games when it comes to spending. So knowing your weak spot, a lot of the things that we talked about involve you slowing down a little, engaging your brain, making it real. We call living within your means, we call that acting your wage. And it's easy to say, sometimes it's tricky to do, but certainly a wise behavior. You can set up so many alerts and warnings, whether that's on your credit card, that's on your accounts, your savings accounts, your checking accounts. Is it a low balance? Did somebody spend a lot of money? You can avoid fraud with this kind of thing. Did somebody try to change my phone number? Lots of things you can do in your home banking or your credit card accounts to, payments due. I get a text that says the payment was received. So lots of ways you can use technology alerts to stay on top of your financial situation. And if you are having trouble with knowing what your money's doing, you can try spending cash or even just simplifying. We have so many ways we can pay for things now. It's just amazing. Gift cards and credit cards and debit cards and cash and pay automatic PayPal and Venmo and Zelle and all of the things, just to try to simplify it so that you're really watching what's happening because you're just using one spending system for a while, keeping it simple. One of the questions we ask a lot when we do classes is, what's the opportunity cost of $5 a day? Because for a lot of people, that's a coffee. Sometimes it's a breakfast burrito, trip to the vending machine. I don't know what your $5 a day is, but if you think about that for a year, it's over $1,800. So that $5 a day just disappears. But if you were focused on that, you'd have $1,800 in a year. If you think about it over 5 years, that's more than $9,000. So something simple like a coffee that has become a habit, and I'm sorry to pick on coffee, but that's the easiest one. It becomes a mindless habit. You don't even really enjoy it anymore. It's just what you do at 10 o'clock or at 6:30 in the morning or whenever it is. But you're not even really enjoying it anymore. It's just what you do. And it's $9,000 over 5 years. Is that the best use of your money? One of the other things you can do is to plan for larger purchases, to think ahead, to be saving. Just like Dee Dee was saying, if anything you can do to shuffle that money over there so you know it's going to last, that it's going to be there when tuition comes due, that it's going to be there to help. I don't know if it's tires for the car, but planning for those expenses. We strongly encourage shopping around, comparing prices. There are people whose money personality just is like, nah, I'll get this right now. I need it right now. I don't mind that it's not on sale. I don't mind whatever. And they spend a lot more money than they need to just because of their personality and not taking the time to do some comparisons. Speaking of time, a lot of people, either individuals or couples, have a sleep on it rule. You can put something into the shopping cart, but you can't pay for it for 24 hours. Or if it's more than this dollar limit, if it's more than $100, then we need to talk. We're not gonna spend unless we've verified that we're both comfortable with this purchase. So some kind of trigger rule when it comes to specific spending. And then one of the easiest tricks that I've heard about a long time ago is just to wrap your credit card in a piece of paper that says how much you already owe on that card. So that you can't pull out the card and use it without being visually reminded of just how much you already owe. It's that slowing down, making you think a little bit, taking a deep breath, going, do I really need to do this? So those are all some tips related to how we manage saving and spending and these mind games that we've explored today. If you did enjoy the concepts that are talked about, this is behavioral economics. And there are some great books out there. Dollars and Cents is written by Dan O'Reilly, and he's written other books. So if you want to get a little chuckle about money, I do encourage his materials. And then Happy Money was written also by some researchers, and it's also lighthearted and quick read, short examples of things. And that includes a lot more of that emotional side. What benefit do I have emotionally, psychologically, from the way I use my money? So, open to any questions or comments that you might have. And just a reminder, we have an Anschutz branch. And Jason, do you want to throw your email
I'll do that.
into the chat? If people have questions about Canvas, anything going on there. And otherwise, Dee Dee, I don't know if you want to go ahead and stop the video.
Just, I think about my own sort of spending and habits when it comes to how easy they make it for you to spend, like having your credit cards in your wallet app and tap to pay. Now I don't even have to take the credit card out. I don't have to look at the balance until I have to go figure out how to pay it at the end of the month or the next month. Just sort of on a more personal, like how I treat the large purchases thing. I find it or treat it as a game. So especially if it's like something that's a little more indulgent for fun, whatever, I'll keep it in my cart. And then, just kind of knowing the seasonality of like those special weekends where they usually tend to do price reductions or coupons, or they'll give you extras. I try and save it for those types of things. But also for students like looking for the good student discount, using the free library passes to go to activities locally. Those are all things that can be done maybe for a little bit less or even free. It's not saying you have to go out without things. It's just being creative in the times that you want to do something a little extra fun. Is there another way to do it less?
Money spending finances is way more emotional and personal than it is about spreadsheets and percentages. So yes, everything we can do to know ourselves and what our triggers and what our strengths and how can we take advantage of that. Yeah, so Dee Dee, thank you for your comments on that.
Yeah, certainly. Well, with that, I'll just thank you both for your time and participation. We really appreciate your partnership and supporting our students here at the Anschutz campus.
Thank you.